Undercover CEO buys steak at his own steakhouse. Could not believe what he hears from two employees behind him. The scent of sizzling ribeye filled the air as Jack Smith, CEO of Smith Steakhouse, took a cautious bite of his meal. Perfect, just as it should be. But then, the sauce, mess it up just a little? A hushed voice whispered from behind the kitchen doors. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to make them hate it. James froze, fork hovering midair. You sure? Another voice replied. We've been doing it all week. A short pause, then, just follow the plan. James's grip tightened around his knife. What the hell was going on in his own restaurant? Jack Smith wasn't just another restaurant owner. He was the man behind Smith Steakhouse, one of the most well-known steakhouses in the city. Built from the ground up, his restaurant was famous for its high-quality cuts, secret recipes, and unmatched customer experience. But success wasn't easy. Competition was fierce, and he had spent years protecting his brand from copycats and underhanded rivals. Yet lately, something felt off. Sales were dipping unexpectedly. Loyal customers had started leaving lukewarm reviews. Some even claimed the food didn't taste the same anymore. Jack knew his chefs were some of the best in the business. So why was his restaurant's reputation suddenly slipping? Determined to get answers, he did what no one expected. He went undercover as a regular customer. Dressed in a simple flannel shirt and worn-out jeans, Jack stepped through the doors of Smith Steakhouse. The warm, familiar scent of grilled steak and buttery mashed potatoes filled the air, wrapping around him like an old memory. This place was his pride, his legacy. Yet tonight, he was just another customer. He walked past the hostess stand, his gaze sweeping the room. The restaurant was busy, but not as lively as it used to be. A couple at the corner table whispered to each other, barely touching their food. A man frowned at his plate, nudging his overcooked steak with a disappointed sigh. Jack's stomach tightened. Sliding into a booth near the kitchen, he picked up a menu, not because he needed it, but because it felt surreal ordering his own food like a stranger. When the waiter arrived, Jack kept his voice casual. I'll take the Smith signature ribeye, he said, tapping the menu. Medium rare, and make sure the house steak sauce is just how the chef makes it. The waiter nodded, scribbling down the order. Of course, sir. Anything to drink? Just water. As he waited, Jack's mind swirled with thoughts. The steakhouse had been getting mixed reviews, complaints about inconsistent flavors, dishes that didn't taste right. He trusted his chefs, his recipes. So why did everything feel off? Minutes later, his plate arrived. The steak sat perfectly seared, juices glistening under the dim lights. Jack took a slow, deliberate bite. Perfect. Just as it should be. He exhaled, relieved, until he heard the voices from behind the kitchen doors. The sauce, mess it up just a little, a hushed voice whispered. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to make them hate it. Jack's fork froze midway to his mouth. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. You sure? Another voice muttered. We've been doing it all week. A short pause, then, just follow the plan. Jack clenched his jaw, setting his fork down with careful precision. His fingers curled into a fist under the table. Something was happening behind his back, and he wasn't leaving until he found out the truth. Jack knew he couldn't confront them immediately. If he showed his hand too soon, they'd cover their tracks, and he'd lose his only chance to expose the truth. No, he needed to watch, listen, and gather proof. For the next few hours, he studied everything. Customers' reactions, the way the food was plated, the expressions of his staff. Some steaks looked perfect, just as he intended. Others, however, were a disaster. Overcooked, drenched in an unnaturally salty sauce, or barely seasoned at all. At one table, a woman pushed her plate away with a look of frustration, shaking her head at her husband. At another, a man flagged down his waiter, his voice tight with disappointment. This isn't how it used to taste, the man muttered. Jack's fists clenched under the table. They were poisoning his reputation, one plate at a time. As closing time neared, the restaurant emptied, leaving only the staff cleaning up and locking away supplies. Jack, blending in with the late-night stragglers, made his way to the kitchen. The scent of grease and smoked meat still lingered in the air, but the lively energy of a bustling dinner service had faded, replaced with exhaustion and quiet conversations. Then near the walk-in freezer, he spotted them, Rick and Marco. The two employees were huddled together, their voices low but urgent. Jack stepped closer, keeping to the shadows. The hum of the refrigerator masked his footsteps. "You got the money?" Marco asked, his tone edged with nervous excitement. Jack held his breath. Rick smirked, pulling out an envelope and flipping it between his fingers like a prize, thick with cash. "Straight from Lincoln's Steakhouse," Rick murmured. "Their chef says we're doing a hell of a job." Jack's stomach twisted. Lincoln's Steakhouse, his biggest competitor. His blood ran cold, and for a split second, his vision blurred with rage. They weren't just messing up orders out of laziness or incompetence. They were being paid to ruin his restaurant. Jack gritted his teeth, his nails digging into his palms. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. But he didn't move. Not yet. He needed undeniable proof, because when he finally confronted them, he would bury them. Jack had built Smith Steakhouse from the ground up. He had spent years perfecting every recipe, selecting only the finest cuts of meat, and ensuring that every plate carried the soul of his vision. His head chef, Marcus, had been by his side since day one, testing spice blends and crafting sauces that set them apart. But now, his own people were poisoning everything he had worked for, all for a paycheck from a rival chef. For the next few days, Jack worked in silence, installing hidden cameras in every crucial spot: the kitchen, the storage room, even the dumpsters out back where Rick and Marco often snuck off for their so-called breaks. He was methodical, patient, even as fury burned inside him like a wildfire. Then the footage started rolling in, and what he saw next, it made his blood boil. Before we reveal the shocking truth, make sure to subscribe to Undercover Files for more jaw-dropping Undercover CEO investigations. We expose corruption, greed, and deception in the business world. Don't miss out. Now back to Jack's shocking discovery. They weren't just ruining recipes. They were tampering with meat temperatures, making sure steaks were cold in the center or burnt to a crisp. They drowned sauces in excessive salt, turned creamy mashed potatoes into inedible slop, and even mishandled fresh ingredients, leaving produce to rot, letting high-quality meat sit in unsafe conditions. Customers weren't just leaving disappointed, they were being driven away. And all of it, every single act of sabotage, led back to one place: Lincoln's Steakhouse. But the final straw? Jack caught them red-handed. Late one night, hidden in the shadows near the back entrance, he overheard a hushed phone call. "Rick." "Yeah, Chef Lincoln," Rick muttered into the phone, voice low. "We'll do it again tomorrow." Jack's pulse thundered in his ears. "That fancy filet?" Rick chuckled. "We'll make sure it tastes like garbage." Jack's fist clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. Enough. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. But they had no idea who they were messing with. It was time to act. The next evening, Jack arrived at Smith Steakhouse. But this time, he wasn't a quiet observer. He wasn't undercover. He was the CEO, and he was here to clean house. The entire staff had been called in for an emergency meeting. Servers, cooks, dishwashers, everyone stood in the dining area, confused murmurs filling the space. The tension in the air was thick. Near the back of the room, Rick and Marco stood together, arms crossed, acting as if nothing was wrong. They had no idea what was coming. Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Rick, Marco." His voice was calm, controlled, but sharp as a knife. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to them. "How much is Lincoln's paying you?" A visible jolt went through Marco's body. Rick's smirk faltered. What?" Marco stammered. Rick forced out a laugh, trying to play it cool. "What are you talking about, man?" Jack didn't say another word. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and hit play. The recordings filled the room. "Yeah, Chef Lincoln. We'll do it again tomorrow. That fancy filet? We'll make sure it tastes like garbage." A stunned silence followed. Then, gasps. Marcus, the head chef, clenched his fist so hard his knuckles turned white. His face burned red with rage. This wasn't just sabotage, it was a disgrace. Rick and Marco looked at each other, their skin pale. They were trapped. "You were selling out the very place that fed you?" Marcus spat, voice shaking with fury. Rick swallowed hard. I don't know what this is. Don't. Jack's voice cut through the air. He stepped closer, his eyes locked onto them with pure, burning disappointment. I trusted you. His voice was low, heavy with betrayal. I built this place with my bare hands. Every person in this room gives their sweat and effort to make it what it is. And you, he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You sold it out for a few envelopes of cash. Marco lowered his gaze, unable to look Jack in the eye. Rick opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. You didn't just betray me, Jack continued, his voice rising with raw emotion. You betrayed every honest worker in this place, every server who takes pride in their job, every chef who pours their soul into the food, every customer who walks through those doors expecting the best. Silence, thick, suffocating. Then, the doors swung open. Security stepped in. Rick's face twisted in panic. Jack, come on, man, don't do this. Get them out, Jack ordered. Security grabbed Rick and Marco by the arms. They didn't resist. They couldn't. They knew it was over. As the doors slammed shut behind them, Jack turned back to his team, the ones who truly mattered. This restaurant is a family, he said, scanning their faces, making sure they felt the weight of his words. If you're not here to honor that, you are not welcome. Marcus exhaled deeply, nodding. The staff, still shaken, straightened their backs, renewed determination in their eyes. Jack took one final glance at the door where the traitors had been dragged out. Then he faced his team with a sharp breath. Let's get back to doing what we do best. With the traitors gone, Jack personally worked with Marcus to ensure the quality of every dish returned to perfection. He issued a public statement, offering free meals to customers who had a bad experience. Within weeks, Smith Steakhouse was back on top, stronger than ever. And Lincoln's? Once word got out that they had been caught bribing employees to sabotage a competitor, their reputation collapsed like a house of cards. Customers turned away, disgusted by their dirty tactics. Some of their own employees quit, unwilling to work for a place that played so low. Then came the lawsuits. Jack didn't even have to lift a finger. Disgruntled customers and former employees did it for him. Lincoln's Steakhouse was hit with complaints, investigations, and legal troubles that buried them in a mess of their own making. Jack took one last bite of his perfectly cooked steak, satisfied. His restaurant, his legacy, was safe once again.